Welcome to another episode of Miami Cop Talk. Visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com. With us is Robert Asencio and Raul Correa discussing the latest issues in public safety, law enforcement, what's in the news with invited guests. And again, visit us, help us grow our audience. We are one community, one voice. And let's get ready to start another episode of Miami Cop Talk. We're back with Miami Cop Talk. I'm Raul with my co-host Robert Asencio. Another episode, one community, one voice. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. I'm excited for this show. I'm excited to bring our next guest on. You know, we talk about how we want to highlight professionals in law enforcement. Well, today we are going to highlight a true professional in law enforcement, a detective, investigator, a person with over nearly 30 years of law enforcement experience, a veteran, a member of the special operations community, a guy who has dedicated his last 20 some odd years in law enforcement to forensic crimes. So last week we talked about the hack on the Colonial Pipeline and its effect and the panic that it caused South Florida. So this week we thought that we speak to a professional, a person on the front lines, a person that can give us true insight as to, you know, the value of what law enforcement represents to the safety of our community. But without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce Jim Medley. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. My police career started in 1982 with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. Needless to say that computers weren't even thought about as far as law enforcement or any of what we've seen here today. But I did get started involved in computers in the 1980s, and then it became a job for me within the police department. About 1999, I started the Fort Lauderdale Police Department's first digital forensic laboratory, computer forensic laboratory. About 3 years later, I had a dual career in my law enforcement. I was also in the National Guard, a Special Forces company in Fort Lauderdale, Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 20th Special Forces. I moved to the Army Reserves, and just so happened the unit that I moved to had a need for digital forensics. So I was called up in 2002 or 2003, and I spent about 3 years on active duty doing computer, what we called media exploitation, digital media exploitation, which uses the same concepts. It was for I was part of a counterterrorism joint task force in the Southwest Asia Theater. I came back, retired from Fort Lauderdale, went to Broward Sheriff's Office, and I was with Broward Sheriff's Office for about 2 years, assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force doing digital forensics. Since then, I moved on. I've got a private practitioner, and I also now come back to law enforcement. I'm currently a digital forensic examiner for the last 3 years at a local agency here, but I also do private consultation with a company called TechX, TECX LLC. So that's my educational background. I have a business degree, management and information systems from Florida Atlantic University, and a master's degree in cybersecurity management from Nova Southeastern University. So that's my digital forensic computer career in a kind of a nutshell.
So I thank you for your service, not just in the military, but certainly in your career in law enforcement, long career in law enforcement. And I really take exception and really, really thank you for your work, specifically not just in the cyber crimes, but crimes against children, right? That seems to be a major problem, continues to be a major problem for people, those who will exploit the children on the internet. I'd like you to talk a little bit about what you do as a forensics investigator.
My expertise, obviously, is on the computer side. So what we try to do is that there are ways to access the information on a suspect computer or an evidentiary item, I should say. And there's our best practices on how to do that. But there's not always the same. So we take that information off and examine it into, we take the data and we start examining it with our software on our systems and just analyze it for, what we're looking for. And, a lot, and that goes with any case, not just with internet crimes against children. I'm being real generic because I don't want to get too much in the weeds because they probably get boring for a lot of people. But needless to say, a lot of our work stems around any examiners, law enforcement, anywhere across the country, across the world will tell you that a large segment of what we do is it's child sexual assault material. That is the phrase that's as in common vernacular now, because that's what it is. Instead of child pornography, it's when you're looking at pornography, or you're looking at children being used sexually, and no matter what it appears to be, whether they appear to be in distress or not distress, they are being sexually assaulted. There's no question about it. You see, 5, 6-year-olds, they're being sexually assaulted. And so that's really what the proper term ought to be, is child sexual assault material.
Wow. Hey, Jim, let me ask you a question. I'll ask for Robert. If you got a, eventually, you talked about an item. When you say items, we're talking cell phones, hard drives, you name it. Apple or Android? I'll ask for Asencio because he tends to leave a lot of incriminating evidence on his phone. So
what are you talking about, man? Quit covering up. Just ask for yourself. Come on and say it.
Yeah. What would you have a harder time, Apple or Android? And I know, and the reason I asked that, and you'll try to, be a little humorous here. There was an incident a while back, San Bernardino, if I don't, make a mistake in mentioning there were some terrorists, and Apple refused to unlock the phones, and everyone figured, hey man, what a horrible thing. They're not helping law enforcement. So the integrity of your computer, your cloud, we hear it all the time. People, had information on their iCloud and they got hacked, and that this and the other. Can you share with the folks what is 100% secure? And I know the answer, but I want them to hear it from you. What is 100% secure?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. 100% secure. There's nothing that's obviously 100% secure. Now, if you talk from a digital forensics standpoint, if we can retrieve data back from an item, whether it's a computer or whatever, there's 3 answers to that. There's yes, there's no, and there's maybe. And you would think, well, maybe, which should be maybe. But no, there are things that, people can do, and you can get locked out of, secure. There are times when we can't get the data is not there. There could be different. I don't want to get into the tools, what could use, what makes it more difficult, what makes it. But that's why, you have to take great care. And we talk to investigators, talk to first responders. When I talk to first responders, I mean officers on the road and stuff like that. There's a really, it's a tough time trying to explain to, where you want the machine on or off, or how you do this. It's changed in my career. When we first started in forensics, it was always pull the plug on the machine, because there could be, when you get there, you want to keep it as sterile evidence because of, different. Now that's not the case anymore. That could be the case though. Now it could be. So nothing's 100% secure, but that doesn't mean there's 100% likelihood that we're going to be able, even with our tools and our software and some of the things that we have, a lot of high-tech stuff, doesn't mean that we're going to be able to get data that was there. We could still be locked out of it.
And that leads me to ask you, Jim, you mentioned data, and very quickly, because, I try to, make light of certain circumstances. But the fact of the matter is we have to try to keep our own personal data secure. If someone were to email me or someone were to send me something incriminating in nature, the minute I open up that file, the minute I go ahead and receive that file, now that data is on my end. So if there is something going on, that's something that potentially can incriminate me, depending on what the content may be. But so, how important it is for people to, secure their data and make sure that when they're online, We mentioned last week the Colonial Pipeline. They got ransomware. They were hacked. So there were vulnerabilities in Colonial Pipeline. And when you're online and you're putting your date of birth, when you're putting your email address, when you're putting your address, when you're putting your all these types of things, doesn't that just give more room to expose you, make you vulnerable?
Well, yes, it does. Some of the things we're talking about, I just want to hit on something that you said. You're opening up something that could be incriminating on your. There's ways to there's ways to explain that. I don't want to make it seem like we find one piece of data on your system that you're going to be arrested and charged with something, because there's always been that people talk about. Taking pictures of your kid in the bathtub and, or something like that, or changing diapers, and, that's child pornography. It's not sexually assault material, but getting back to what you're saying is, it's, you talk about being hacked by Colonial. Well, that's not necessarily, you don't think of necessarily that someone is on the other end of that, trying to get through your system. It could be simple as sending you an email, and that opened up something in the background, and now they're in. So that's one of the things that people ought to be in the habit of. It. You get people to send these joke pictures or joke videos. Hey, you got to see this, and it comes through your email and things like that. That's a huge danger there. People ought to be out of the habit of that, and I know that that's probably 90%, 95% people do that. They take those bad habits to work.
Correct.
And then they see the same things. Click on this, and they're opening up, not understanding what's going on there are things that are going on in the background. So that's a huge event, and there's a lot of companies have to go through a lot of security awareness training, and that's a big thing of that. Is so many people click links. It says it's some funny video, some naked pictures of some beautiful woman, and boom, that's all you need, and it's in there. It's just, that's probably the biggest thing that people ought to be in the habit of, is stop clicking these links, or even sent from friends, because it may not be from the friend. Could be the friend's email address that's already compromised, that somebody else is sending that from your contact list, just waiting to get somebody else.
So for those people that are just joining us, we're on Miami Cop Talk. We're speaking with a forensics, true professional law enforcement, forensics detective with over 30 years of law enforcement experience, military experience, deployed with the military overseas as a forensics investigator. So a guy that really knows the area of forensics. Jim Medley, thank you for being with us. But Jim, I want to ask you, what do you see as the biggest threat to regular everyday users in South Florida as far as computer, like cyber crimes, if you will? Because I know that's a very broad term, and you probably bring it down a lot more specific. But for our audience, what do you see as the biggest threat to people that are on the internet, even law enforcement, right? Our police officers are very much on the internet. They use it on a regular basis. I mean, who doesn't use it, right?
Right.
But what would you see the biggest threat right now?
I guess we're all in danger of your personally identifiable information, and giving, accessing your accounts that you give out. Yeah, people probably ought not to. Sometimes you get an option to leave your credit card information with some vendor that you have online that you might go to all the time. And if you start, and there's always this option that if you want us to store your credit card for you, which is rather convenient. But the more you have these different organizations with your credit card information, your personal information, once that's out there, you start adding up of these, you're expanding your vulnerability, because now you're depending on those different companies to have IT security, that they're not going to get hacked. that's the one thing I'd probably say is just find something that you don't want to start storing your credit card information on different vendors that you go online. That might be something that you would think about. Information is any type of your personal information. Somebody wants to send you a free gift card on your birthday. Although now there's so much information, personal information out there now, I don't know if how much that's going to prevent that. So, but that's one of the things that you might want to start thinking about is your information and sharing it with information with not nefarious people that these are legitimate businesses, but you have no idea what kind of security practices that they're doing and who's in charge of that information. Remember, information now can be easily monetized, and so you have a company who's in charge of how much is an individual being paid to has access on the company side. You get somebody who's getting paid not getting paid that well, and they're looking at millions of dollars of potential stuff that they can monetize. So
yeah,
there's the insider threat on the other end of who you're dealing with. You can't in the security world, we call you have to do a risk analysis, and then you have to take those risks that you're going to take and then try to mitigate those risks as much as possible. So those type of things. Ransomware, probably I've talked to people, ransomware is probably, it's gotten to a big business, but it's still down there in smaller companies. You have people that you can rent ransomware. And if you want to be a small time player, and get anybody who you want. You see these big gangs that are cyber gangs that are looking at these large companies for big payoffs, but you can get smaller scale as well, just by renting. You can rent this stuff and have your own targets and just pay the rent to the ransomware developers and collect the money from your victims.
The skimmers. So one of your partners, when I was in the legislature, the first bill I introduced was to outlaw the skimmers, because he, as a law enforcement professional, was sharing with me that the skimmers, although we knew that it was illegal to put them in the gas stations, the pumps, it was not necessarily illegal to have the skimmers, possess the skimmers, sell the skimmers, or even manufacture them. So how big is that of a problem? And before you answer that, I just wanted to let the audience know the problem for law enforcement was that they were encountering individuals with skimmers, little cubes that you see merchants processing credit cards. And they were not able, knowing that they were skimmers, and there's no legitimate purpose to have a skimmer other than to steal and record your personal information, right? So the issue was that there was no law that outlawed possession, sale, and manufacture or delivery of those skimmers in Florida. So we introduced a bill. That was the first bill I introduced. It was passed unanimously. And the day that it went to the governor's office to sign, the governor's desk to sign, I received a call that I had been, my identity had been stolen from the bank. Yeah. The bank notified me. So thank God we passed that bill, and it's law right now. But can you share how that industry works? And you just mentioned, somebody who's not well paid, maybe not all, but maybe some, waiters will skim your card and then do the transaction, because once you skim the card, record the information, it's not recorded as a sale. It's, nobody knows it other than the people that have your data. They may sell it, upload it to the dark net, sell it off in blocks. Can you explain a little bit about that and how big of a threat that still is to consumers?
Well, yeah, anytime you have the magnetic strip with the skimmers doing that, I think it's been mitigated. It may have been mitigated with the chip. That's the reason why the chip on the cards and thing. But your card can still work with the skimmer. Yeah, interesting what you said about the skimmer. We just received a call. My partner got a call from the Secret Service and they were trying to go federal on a case that was a state case. He had arrested, and it was it's somehow the AUSA. And I'm going through what he was telling me, so it might not be completely accurate, but I do know the AUSA was not going to file federally because they thought that the original state search warrant was not valid because they read the statute wrong, that the possession thereof, the possession of the skimmer itself was a crime. And so he had to remind the Secret Service who wanted information from him because they wanted to push back on the AUSA. But right now, from a technical perspective, we use the Secret Service to do those kinds of investigations. That's the software. I think on a digital forensic side, it's the software and the access to those skimmers to get the information off from a forensic standpoint is a little cumbersome. I know, guys, last time I talked to somebody, you basically have to tear the device up to try to get the information off. So I do know, it's constantly what you see a lot of gas stations. Gas stations are, a big target for this, and they'll use probably where they have to access the gas pump. It's usually the gas pump the furthest away, just like we used to have in the bank fraud things. It used to be called felony lane, where people would cash checks, stolen checks at the drive-through, and it would be the farthest lane away from the teller. And because for obvious reasons, they didn't want to be ID'd, and that became felony lane, that particular lane. So I imagine that's the same concept with servicing your skimmers at the gas pumps. But gas pumps seem to be a very particular target for that kind of activity, where people because you're still using the most of those are still using the magnetic strip. I see a lot of that, and so that's where a lot of the problems arise from there. Now you have Bluetooth scanners as well at these things that are skimming vis-a-vis Bluetooth access to certain things. So it's always leapfrogging type technology. Some of these handheld skimmers will be a thing of the past because something else will be new, but some protection will be implemented. And then the next thing there'll be a exploit for that protection mechanism.
Jim, thank you for talking with us. We're here on Miami Cop Talk. Visit us on MiamiCopTalk.com for all our episodes. We got Jim Medley, a computer forensic investigator with a local law enforcement agency in South Florida, and a consultant with TechX. Jim, let me ask you a question. If someone were to, they're new into this bizarre world that we live in cybersecurity, we got parents that are just handing cell phones out to their teenage kids, and now as elementary school kids have cell phones. Is there a resource that you can direct folks for general information on computer safety tips, somewhere where individuals can go and gather information, basic information on the do's and don'ts on what they should be practicing when they're online, when they are giving computers and phones and tablets to young children?
What comes down to, if you're your children, you've got to monitor what they're doing, and maybe some people have some problems with that, and you may have a teenager that, that might be an accident, but you get them young and just monitor what's going on there, because there's things even more nefarious. In my mind, I have some young children too, and my mind is not even from the hacking perspective. It's you see the cyberbullying and things like that, and you don't know what's going on because we didn't grow up in that world, right? Where all these kids are connected, so it's kind of hard for us to realize, if somebody is what is called cyberbullying and how that affects a young person. It's hard for us to really see that or feel it, right? So that's the big thing, is that just monitor monitor what they're doing and control the apps. It's a lot of work. It really is. And I think where a lot of people, they don't want to put in the work. Security is work. And if you're thinking that there's some kind of there's applications out there that can help you, but you really have to monitor and at least talk if they see something or whatever, because there are all kinds of different. We talked about pedophiles online. There's all kinds of threats to them, not just hacking versus
Right.
it's good for them to get into some kind of safe habits and understand that this is not make them paranoid of they need to enjoy what they're doing, but it's not all not everybody's there online has your best interest at heart. So just understanding, don't be surprised if your kids come up and there's some kind of issue they're having. But I would think that would be the big thing is just be involved. And if you're gonna give somebody those kind of gifts at a very young age, be prepared to you're going to pay a price one way or another. You pay the price in time, energy, and effort up front, or you're going to pay a price in the back end, with some kind of incident with your kid that unfortunately may become problematic. We do a lot of sometimes one of the things was school threats with some of the kids. Since COVID, we haven't had this because a lot of kids aren't in school, but you'll hear, there'll be a school resource officer has a problem at the school and there's a threat of maybe violence, and we get called out to do a phone examination just to, trying to cover, or it might be somebody who is the accused in this case. And, we go through a lot of teenagers' phones and stuff like that. And you see, and a lot of these times haven't panned out that there's a, it's kind of, a lot of these times it hasn't, I haven't really seen a legitimate, this kid right now, that's my experience. But you get an insight of how kids are thinking and how kids stuff. And you see a lot of kids, it seems like a lot of kids are depressed these days. And, or at least the ones we see that are constantly online. And I'll leave that for some other expertise or whatever. That's just anecdotal evidence on my part that maybe it's not the most healthiest thing in the world to have your kids online. And I know if everybody else's kids are, your kids want to be as well. So it's a tough call, but I would say, put the time, energy, and effort in monitoring what your kids are doing.
Yeah, a story comes to mind, a case that I supervised. So when I was doing investigations and police work, I was supervising a squad, and one of my investigators came to me with a case that he needed added resources allocated for the investigation. And it was around a guy, an adult. It turned out that this guy was an adult, but what he was doing was that he was befriending kids after school as they were leaving the school. And that was how he gained access to their internet, I guess the platforms that they were on. And I don't remember the social media platforms that they were on, but long story short is that he actually stalked a bunch of kids and he was identifying the individual kids. So when we came into this investigation, and the only reason why we were able to track and actually decipher what he was actually trying to do here was because we went to investigators like yourself, and I believe it's your supervisor played a big role here. So what he did was he was able to give us some, trail as to point us to what this guy was doing. But what the guy was doing was he was leading up to abducting children. And when we caught the guy, the amount of material and the amount of information, evidence that we obtained from this guy's from his devices that he was using was not only scary, but there was evidence there that, without going into too much detail, that he had actually abducted children, which was what he was trying to do. He was talking his kids to abduct them after school. And the parents were actually playing, they were actually participants in helping these, or actually making their kids more vulnerable because they weren't paying attention to the kids. Long story short, the parents were signing up the kids to these emails that the guy was sending them, invites and parties and what have you. And long story short, we were able to catch him before he abducted a child. Actually, we caught him while he was trying to abduct a child from school.
Yeah.
But man, this guy was a monster, a true monster. Sexual perversions, the things that he was planning to do to these kids and that he apparently had done to others was amongst one of the most heinous crimes and investigations that I have ever been involved in.
Yeah, if you're involved in that's tough. You see, some people want to, play it off as somebody just collecting, naked pictures of children. Why should that be illegal? And there's without getting into some of the counter arguments with some, but a lot of times they're using some will use it as a grooming tool. The other you start befriending children, and then you get to a point where you start showing them. They'll start showing them using that child pornography, the child sexual assault material, using that as a norming kind of thing. See, this is kind of a normal kind of behavior, and it leads into more and more and more aberrant behavior. But there's I won't get into a lot of because I've talked to people about the psychology behind all that stuff, and it's not really, I don't think it's well hashed out, and but it's sometimes speculative, and it's kind of somewhat interesting on our part in the sense of why someone is doing that. But then again, you forget about the whys, and from my perspective, you just concentrate on the whats, and so you can drive yourself crazy thinking about why someone is so into that. You just accept it is, and you follow where the evidence takes you.
Well, I think there's a technical term for those individuals, sick bastards. I don't know if that's actual a psychological term, but I can tell you I've dealt with a lot of those throughout my career. And it's very, there used to be that show To Catch a Predator on TV, and that's just skimming on the level of sewage in our society that needs to be cleaned up. Unfortunately, you know more than anybody the things that are out there. As we're getting ready to close out, Jim, I want to thank you, like Robert did, I want to thank you for your service and your continued service. What you do is hard because you're actually speaking for those individuals that are online that are clueless to what's going on, and you're helping to solve cases. It's really devastating when the innocents and people think that they are the sanctuary of their personal data. But the fact of the matter is we're living in a world where you said it, nothing's 100%. And when you're doing your forensics, you got to try to be as 100% as possible. As we're getting ready to close, is there any brief story as referred to, war story, anything that comes to mind that you can tell us that you can share that had a positive outcome in a case you dealt with throughout your over 3 decades of experience, something that occurred that makes you keep doing this? Because at some point in time, you need to say you got to have some satisfaction and reward that you're making a difference. Can you share one of those making a difference kind of cases?
Well, I've got one that stands out now that you asked me, but there's no dramatic rescue of children. But for me, because I'm into the technical aspect of it, there was when I was in the Broward Sheriff's Office with the ICAC, we had a particular a 32-year-old guy with a lot of computer skills. He had a lot of Linux system administrator things like that, and he had covered his tracks, and he was online. He was actually online trying to solicit girls. He'd do Google searches such as, and a lot of them would be single women with children, which can be targeted by these guys. Obviously, they're looking to date the woman, but because they have kids. He would do things like that. He had, and he was particular finally did. He was using some very advanced stuff, and I was able to basically. It took several months, but to basically crack the nut and be able to make a case on him, and which was be able to go through some very, very technical things that brought some evidence to bear that would normally not have been a prosecutor. We had two different assigned prosecutors, and they probably would normally not want to go with that because it was too technical. But I was able to explain it to a degree and document everything that I did, and to show it in a simple way that they did go after him. And he didn't get the normal, 20 to 25 years, whatever he was looking at, but he did a plea, and he at least got 8 years out of that. So that to me was kind of satisfying that when I was, nobody else wanted to touch the case, not because they didn't want to, it was a hard case to do. And they gave me the time, and then I was doing it with other cases. So that kind of, for me, because it was a technical challenge. And when you go to this, when we go to training, forensics courses and things like that, oftentimes they'll have scenarios where they want to show off their what we call tool, our software applications of tools. They want to show off, okay, and they have some scenario where this guy is, and it's almost always a guy, sorry, and they'll hide data and how to uncover this and go this practical. And then you go back to your work, and you don't see that kind of level of, so sometimes it's not as, there's other challenges, but once you get into the data and say, oh, okay, it's in my documents on a desktop and thing. But this guy was different. So that's a personal, to me. I know it's not, a white knight coming to the rescue kind of story, but that's for me, that's it.
Well, it does make a difference for the victims out there. So I want to thank you for what you do. Keep doing it. Don't lose heart. It does make a difference. It may sound corny, but the fact of the matter is, if you're able to put one guy away for 8 years, it did make a difference for maybe other victims that he could have potentially, terrorized. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And as we're getting ready to close, again, MiamiCopTalk.com. Visit us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all major social media platforms, secure social media platforms. Now that we're talking about that, we don't harvest your information. We don't harvest your email address. Here at Miami Cop Talk, we're just one community, one voice, and trying to learn how to be a better society out there. Robert, you want to close us off for this episode?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim, and to your colleagues, the unsung heroes of law enforcement. So for any of you that are out there looking to trash police work or hear others talking disparaging law enforcement, these are the individuals who keep us safe. So don't paint all law enforcement with the same brush as maybe the actions of some bad seats, bad officer. But many professionals, the majority of professionals in law enforcement are there to serve honorably, and they also protect us. So Jim, I can't thank you enough on behalf of Raul, Miami Cop Talk. We look to have you with us in the near future on more episodes. This is really an intriguing topic, one that deserves more than half an hour of conversation, one that deserves much more information and more telling of issues that will help all. So on behalf of all of us at Miami Cop Talk, we thank you, and we look forward to hearing you and seeing you in the next episode to come.
You have been listening to Miami Cop Talk. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com to get the latest on all our broadcasts. We want to thank our partners and sponsors that have made Miami Cop Talk possible. And on behalf of Robert Asencio and Raul Correa, we want to thank you for listening to Miami Cop Talk. Stay connected and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com.